Recording in progress.
Okay, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the City of Groton Mayor and Council meeting for Monday, May 19th, 2025. I'll call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Mayor Hedrick, Deputy Mayor Debo, Councilor Sheffield, Councilor Norris, and Councilor Artelli are present.
Okay, please stand and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we move on to recognitions, awards, memorials. This is National Public Works Week, a proclamation. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the City of Groton. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works officials who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the City of Groton to gain knowledge of and to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works program in their respective communities. And whereas this year, 2025, marks the 65th Annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, and now, therefore, I, Keith Hedrick, Mayor of the City of Groton, do hereby designate the week May 18th through 24, 2025 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand and affix the official seal of the City of Groton this 19th day of May 2025, signed Keith Hedrick, Mayor of City of Groton. And in that vein, I want to let you guys know that one of our long-term public works officials, Steve Beekert, who is a supervisor for Public Works, is retiring, and he will retire officially at the end of this month. His official start date was May 29th, 1984. The official date of retirement is May 31st, 2025. 41 years of service to the City of Groton. He began as a laborer, and then he was promoted to heavy equipment operator in 1986, promoted to highway supervisor in 2001, promoted to public works supervisor in 2007, and he also served as a tree warden for a period of time. So I want to thank him for his service and congratulate him on his retirement, and we will continue to move on. So any other recognitions, awards, or memorials? Okay, we'll move on. Receipt of citizens' petitions. Receipt of citizens' petitions is a portion of the council meeting where the council welcomes comments from citizens. To address the council, please sign a sheet on the table at the front of the meeting room. When you're recognized, please approach the podium. Clearly state your name and address. Each presentation should be limited to 5 minutes or less, and citizens should, if possible, submit emailed or written comments. Presentations should be related to matters pertinent to the City of Groton. City councilors are only asked questions in order to clarify the speaker's presentation and can respond during the responses to citizens' petitions portion of the meeting. City Clerk, do we have anyone signed up?
We do. First is Robert Zuliani.
Okay, Mr. Zuliani, you have the floor.
Good evening, council members. My name is Robert Zuliani. I live at 23 Cushman Street, Groton, Connecticut. I am here to support the three-department Groton Utilities budget and the Groton City budget for 2025-26. Considering the many factors impacting today's economic environment in today's world, these budgets really represent a good representation going forward financially for a sound and well-developed city. This will keep our services going strong. It'll keep our city safe, and I support all these budgets entirely. I thank you for my time.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? If you could, Deb, if you could just sign this, just get on.
I think she wrote my name.
You're on there already?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And you,
Deborah Patrick, 8 Mellow Avenue here in the city. Good evening, all of you. I just have a couple of things that I have questions about. I have been reading that City Day is going to be expanded, and I have concerns about how we're going to pay for that. My understanding is that they're going to be adding lights to an area that does not have electricity or lights, and there must be a pretty hefty cost to that. So I guess one of my questions is, who's making these decisions to do this? And is this really what the city taxpayers' money should be spent on? And one of the other things with City Day, if you want to make it bigger, well, you have to have more people working it, and staffing has not been easy the last several years to have enough people working to cover the needs of the many people who will be there. So I think this is something that needs to be thought out a little more. And one of the other things that I noticed in the budget, for a number of years when I was here, and once I was considered a full-time employee and could have all of the benefits afforded a full-time employee, the job was broken up into 2 distinct functions, and those functions were not paid equally. All of a sudden I noticed that those functions are now being paid equally, and I'm curious as to what could have possibly changed to make that a priority. I know that it was only, I believe, last year that that was changed, and I would truly like to know why it suddenly was done and why it couldn't have been done when I requested it some years back. I was told, no, we can't do that. So, thank you for your time.
okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, moving on, response to citizens' petitions, comments. Deputy Mayor Depot?
I just wanted to comment, I know voting on the budget is in the agenda for the meeting, so my essentially response will be in that discussion. Because
Okay.
both the comments were about budget.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Approval of minutes, take a motion to approve the mayor and council meeting minutes of May 5th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. I'll take a motion to approve the special mayor and council meeting minutes of May 12th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Communications and reports, Councilor Sheffield.
Just a note to, I was looking at the, I guess the painting done at basketball courts at Washington Park. It looks like they've started to shape the perimeter of the court, and looks pretty good. Let's hope, I guess, the weather cooperates to where we don't get any rainfall to spoil any of the paint. But looks like the markings look pretty good so far. So we hope it looks good. So and that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Norris.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Talley. Do you have any?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Depot.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to remind everyone as the school year is winding down, but I wanted to remind everyone about the mentor program at the public schools. They just did the kind of end of year dinner, And, it's still ongoing, but consider joining it for next year as the school year starts back up. There are lots of kids that can use an adult just to chat with. It's 30 minutes once a week. It's not a huge commitment, and it really makes a difference in the lives of the kids. And I've seen a lot, we've all seen on Facebook and in the news, there's a lot of turmoil in the world happening, and I think, just to have another adult that is a safe place for kids can make a big difference. So I just want to encourage people to look into that. You got plenty of time to learn about it and sign up before next school year starts. Last week on Monday, I volunteered at the mobile food pantry that was over at the senior center, and they do it, you go inside and it's a walk up. They're doing that one once a quarter. So if you are unable to attend one of the drive up ones, or just need additional food for your household, keep an eye out on their page. It's really simple. You just walk in and they hand you a bunch of food. You go around the room. I also attended at the Groton Public Library. I attended a book club, and I was looking into all the programs that the libraries have to offer, and just wanted to encourage, there's kind of something for everyone. There's all ages. I think there's at least 3 book clubs going on all of the time. So if you're looking for something social to do, look into the library. They also play movies there. There's all kinds of things. So I just want to encourage people to take a look at the library and the senior center, especially over the summer. If you're looking for some stuff to do, they have a jam-packed agenda of things for people to do. I also attended on the 16th. I went to the Tip of Cop at Buford's, which was really fun. As they do every year, they raise money for the Special Olympics. And I just want to thank our police department, because that does take time to put that together. And Margaret at Buford's lets them come kind of run the show a little bit. And it's a fun thing to do. I know there's another one coming up at Par 4, I believe, correct? So keep an eye out on the city police department page for when that one is, and go help out our police officers, if nothing else, to have a little chat with them while they serve the public in a different manner than they usually do. And it's all for a good cause, to raise money for the Special Olympics of Connecticut. So that is all.
Okay. Clerk Procure.
The July 4th signups for walking in the parade is coming up soon, so anybody that wanted to rep the city, if they could let me or Mayor know, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to new business. Deputy Mayor Depot. 41.
R-25-5-41. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and council approve the temporary use and consumption of alcohol at Eastern Point Beach on September 6, 2025, as part of the Groton City Brew Run, hosted by the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce and sponsored by Groton Utilities, pursuant to the provisions of Eastern Point Beach rules and regulations. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is discussed at Committee of the Whole. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Councilor Sheffield.
Resolution R-25-05-42. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and council authorize and approve a contract with Northeastern Tree Service, Incorporated, Cranston, Rhode Island, for tree maintenance in Washington Park for the quoted amount of $14,600.00 from capital improvement funds. I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. This is discussed at the Committee of the Whole. All in favor say aye. Aye. Oh, wait. Deputy Mayor Depot.
We asked this in the last meeting, and I couldn't remember what year was the original capital improvement fund set aside for the trees? Because that's what we're using this from, right?
Correct. I believe it was last year's budget, but that money gets transferred into the capital account, so it was sitting there for this
Okay,
budget.
I was just curious when we originally
I believe
set it
Mary
aside.
said that it was from the previous year's budget, not the current year.
Okay, that sounds correct, but I couldn't remember. Thank you.
Any other comments? This was discussed at a committee of the whole. Is there any additional? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. City Clerk, the next one is duplicately numbered. So can we put an alpha on that? Mm-hmm. So do we want that to be 25-05-42 alpha?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Or 4-3.
well,
It
there's
should be
the
4-3.
4-3 after that.
It's 4-3 after.
How do we want to,
4-4. Keep going.
It's however you want me to change it, Mayor. I can do alpha, I can do, or we can,
Just from legislative, I'd recommend just making it after the last resolution, so that way you're not changing every resolution going through. So
well, that's
to
what I
make
was
it
going to say, if you make it
4-6.
4-2 alpha,
No, but if you just make it 4-6, it'll just be it'll be after, so that all the other ones will go in line.
oh, 4-6, okay. That makes sense. So we will change this one for the electric to be R-25-5-46. Counselor Sheffield. No, Counselor Norris.
R-25-05-46. Therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council approve the operating and capital budgets for the electric division for fiscal year 2025-2026. I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. This is discussed during the committee of the whole. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none. Counselor Norris.
I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you for everyone that is on GU Commission. Month after month, year after year, they really put their heart and soul into what they do here, so I just wanted to thank them all.
Any other comments? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. Counselor Talley? 4-3.
4-3, okay. R-25-05-43. Therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council approve the operating and capital budgets for the water division for fiscal year 2025 to 2026. I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. This is discussed during the committee of the whole. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. Deputy Mayor Depot.
Resolution R-25-5-44. Therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council approve the operating and capital budgets for the sewer division for fiscal year 2025 to 2026. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is discussed during the committee of the whole. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Counselor Sheffield.
Resolution R-25-05-45. Therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council approve the city of Groton budget for the fiscal year 2025-2026 pursuant to the City of Groton Charter, Article 6, Section 2C. I so move.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. I'll open the floor for discussion. Deputy Mayor Depot.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, so I do have a few, sorry, loud binder, a few questions. I know that it was asked in one of the meetings about, I think in HR, we hired a part-time person last year to fill in the gap because we didn't have, we weren't fully staffed. And I believe in the meeting, you said that we were going to be fully staffed, or we had an employee coming on in that department. Can you, the HR department has 3 employees, correct? Or 3?
That is correct. As the
Full-time?
director and 2 HR generalists.
And right now, 2 of those positions are vacant?
Well, currently, Linda Abadizian is part-time
Right,
as the HR director.
right.
Johanny is filling the 1 generalist, and then the other generalist is vacant. And we have not made an offer to my knowledge. So the new HR director will come on board. She'll be introduced to you, to the council next week. And then My intent is to bring her on June 3rd.
Okay,
And so we still need, Linda had sent some justification for the need for this year for the part-time, for closing out for the beach and everything else. And it's gonna take some time to get the new director or the new generalist up to speed with everything, and then we do have a backlog.
so I guess my question is though, if we used the part-time person last year because those positions were vacant and we needed that assistance, if we plan on filling those positions this year, then we're essentially just adding a position to their budget permanently unless we're hiring a temporary employee. Right?
Go ahead.
That is a temporary employee, that part-time position, just for the record, it's not a full-time permanent. It's just that actually, the person who has been part-time there has actually been floating through a couple of different departments and part-time roles.
Okay. So then my other question for that is, if we're using a temporary part-time administrative, right, employee in their role as administrative, could we not use that employee for the other, there's a few other spots in the budget where we need administrative assistance, like typing in planning and zoning and things like that, instead of hiring a different temp employee over there?
That's essentially what this person has been doing. This person has done a part-time role in planning and zoning already. They do stuff for the Parks and Rec, and then they've also done stuff for HR.
So in those department budgets, is that those part-time lines are planned for that part-time person?
That part-time person was used in the past. I do not know what the plan it was for planning with the typing, and if it was to use that same individual, I don't know what the plan was.
Because looking at, it just seems that we are, for example, that typing we need the zoning regulations retyped. That makes sense. The amount that was quoted, I'm not sure what the rate we're paying someone to type up the zoning regulations, but I think we were quoted $9,900 for someone to type up the zoning regulations. And, I mean, even if you divide that by $40 an hour, that's 247 hours. Is that what we think it's gonna take to retype that? So it would seem like there would be a more efficient way to do that. And including in the administrative budget, we are increasing the overtime allowance in the finance budget, I apologize. The overtime allowance, but you're planning to be fully staffed, correct? So last year, we spent more on overtime than usual because you weren't fully staffed. We didn't spend overtime money last year?
Nope, the reason why we've kind of left that line item as far as the overtime is, right now, the staff is currently allowed a flex schedule. Their contract is an 8 to 4:30 schedule. They are allowed flex, which allows them on weeks, and I'll use the week of the Thanksgiving holiday, where payroll has to be done by close of business Monday for ACHs and everything. They would traditionally have worked a long day there, then work their normal Tuesday, Wednesday, which would have had created overtime. That flex schedule has allowed them to flex that and just use that additional time worked and take the I want to say comp time, but just the flex time of the schedule. The reason why we left that was if the decision is to open the building back up 5 days a week, 8 to 4:30, the expectation is that our office would be staffed by somebody, which then could create this overtime. There's also going to be additional training that's going to be needed with 2 new onboards. Again, I believe my budget, without looking at it, was only $2,000 for overtime, so there really isn't a lot. This also accounts for if there's an outside, which they have in the past, they haven't the last couple of years. If they are asked to work city day and they do want to work city day, that they will be paid overtime for that. So there are certain things where they can be asked to work that would require overtime if they want to accept it. They have not accepted it the past few years. Previously, there was employees that did accept them positions and additional assignments.
So, in the year that ended 2024, your overtime was only $195, but last year was $1,000. And you're saying that's because of flex schedule?
Correct, and they haven't taken on those additional opportunities to work the overtime for city events that would allow that, or they chose to work them. They have an option.
Okay. And then, I was trying to pull up my, we got sent the revised HR worksheets, which I appreciate. I'm gonna find it. Hold on. Here it is. That's not it. On the contractual services line in HR, like many other budgets, the amount that they used last year and then the amount requested for this coming year, there's a big difference between that. So is, in the HR budget, is there something we're expecting in contractual services that's going to make that way more expensive than last year? I'm trying to.
And I apologize, are you looking budget to budget, or are you looking at estimated to budget?
Well, last year's budget was, I'm trying to pull it up, hold on. Thought I had it pulled up, here it is. So last year's budget was 49,500 under contractual services for HR. Our actual, or our estimated number is 16,711, but we're still requesting 54,133 for the next year. This is-
Again, I don't want to speak for the HR department. I know one of the things that they had in that contractual last year that was pushed off was their HRIS system. And then they kind of got pushed along, and then it was decided to be in the best interest to leave that for the new director to take on that. So I believe that was why that stayed in there. I don't know if there was an additional ask in the contractual services.
Oh, no, that's the one thing that stayed. What about the fact that we're gonna have contracts next year?
The contracts wouldn't affect it, those get charged to
Those
each
get to the
individual department.
So given that, though, this line, like other lines in the budget, is increasing even though we didn't even come close to spending it last year. Do you know how much that HRIS system is?
Yeah, I just pulled out the detail. So one of the changes that was listed was the EAP solutions, there's an increase in that. There was an increase in the same was for the HRS system, the 40,000. And then the big increase of 5,000 was for DMV checks for all employees, which was a recommendation that came from our insurance carrier for the motor vehicle policies. So that was something that was new this year in there.
So that means if we had purchased the HRIS system in this current year, we would have been over budget anyways, correct?
Correct, if it came in at that budget. Again, that's the estimated amount. I don't know what the system was she was looking at. It could have been less, it could have been more, I don't know, but yes.
Okay. And then, in these, I know I'm jumping around, but, and I brought this up before, but under elections, you know, we spent 6,000 on the election last time. And I feel like the answer we got to how much an election costs, like, what's the reason we're planning more than double that? Even if there's a primary, like, what is that cost estimate based on? Is there additional staff, or is it the addition? Because we still had 2 ballots last time, right? Or is this gonna be the first year we have 2 ballots?
In the last municipal election, we did not have a primary. So having a whole primary is an additional all set of absentee ballots, staffing that for the poll workers and everything like that. And
And that is all on us.
Right.
All of the staff would be just for us, for our primary.
versus splitting the cost with the town for the main municipal election.
Right.
Okay, so if we have a primary, it's going to cost more than a regular election costs us?
Right, correct.
Okay. And then, under the boards and commissions, the Conservation Commission. Again, is one of those budgets where last year we had a budget, we spent way under the budget, but then we're still asking for, a higher number for this year. What page is that on? No, I can't find it. Notifications. That's not it. Hold on, no, I can't find the page. Is it not under? Oh, you know what, I think it's on page 41. Because it's under building and zoning, on page 41,
Page 41.
I think. Is it 40? Yeah.
41.
The Conservation Commission, last year's budget was 8,500. We only spent 5,300, but we're planning for 8,500 again. Is there something expected that we're planning on spending more money? I know it's a small amount, but there's, throughout the budget, there's so many lines like this where we didn't spend the money last year, but then we're asking for more money this year or the same amount. And I'm not quite sure what that's for. So can you elaborate on what falls under the Conservation Commission, under this boards and commissions budget, and why we would be spending 8,500 next year, when this past year we only spent 5,300, and the year prior we only spent 2,000? So I'm just wondering if there's something we're planning on, or that we have an idea that is gonna cost
Well,
more money.
go ahead, Ron, take a look, see if you can find something in Scott's information. And part of the cost is depending on how many applications come before the Conservation Commission, and whether or not we need legal counsel.
Okay, so is that how, like, wetlands application, like,
Just a minute.
okay. So that doesn't go. Okay.
So the breakdown for that, just so for your informational, it's 5,000 contractual, which the estimate was 4,000 for that. There's office expense and advertising, was budgeted for the 2,500 with the estimate of 1,000 for that. And then the third piece of it is professional development. They had budgeted 1,000, but they were only planning on spending 300. So that would be if commissioners wanted to go to trainings and those types of things. That's where the professional development would come from. So that's what he has in his budget for that breakdown. As far as the more details of that, I would leave that to the mayor.
Okay,
I think there are now mandatory trainings that's required by the state for the different commissions.
well, I know that everyone has to do sexual harassment training now on all the boards and commissions.
Right. But there's also, like, for inland wetlands, planning and zoning, ZBA, there's specific training that the state mandated that they have to get. And I don't remember if it's every year, if it's every other year.
Okay. The other thing, and I know most of my things we did discuss a little bit at the other department meetings, but, and I know Counselor Norris brought this up at the meeting for planning and zoning. I know that we're planning on receiving more applications once the zoning amendment goes through, which requires more paperwork on her end. But as Counselor Norris stated, I find it hard to believe that it's going to be $5,000 of additional papers, especially because that case is not going to be done at the beginning of the fiscal year. It's going to be done, you know, we're estimating further into the year. It just seems like some of these line items like that are, as a lot of the department heads kind of said, like, just in case we have like 1,000 applications, but that's not realistic. We're not gonna get 1,000 planning and zoning applications in the last couple months of the fiscal year next year. And from my position, and I, you know, have received feedback from some residents, you know, and I said this before too, that the town budget is going to go up. There is really no option there, and their budget is large. And I would like to limit our increase as much as possible. And I think one of the big ways we can do that, I know that we want to redo the pavilions at the park, and I know that there's a big chunk of money set aside to do that. Considering all of the improvements that we've made at the park and the beaches already that are in the works, I'd be interested in potentially pushing off some of those improvements, maybe just the pavilions and redo the bathroom, or vice versa, or something, so that the increase this year is more minimal. And I know the increase is not a crazy amount, but right now, if we increase it, it's $36 for every $100,000 of property value, you know, on top of whatever the town does. So I think a resident on their average house is gonna be paying at least a couple $100 extra in their taxes. I think, for example, Parks and Rec, we have put a lot of money into the improvements this year, and I think that maybe we can push some of that off to the next fiscal year, which would keep that increase lower.
You have roofs that need to be replaced on pavilions. You have,
My question is though, those have been needed to be, we've been talking about redoing those for years and years, and unless, in my estimation, if they're not falling apart, you know, we're going from spending $115,000 a year on capital improvements in Parks and Rec to all of a sudden $387,000, I think is the number. That's quite a jump. And I can see, you know, putting away a little bit more, and Parks and Rec actually, I don't mean to pick on them because their budget actually, other than that, I believe went down a little bit. They, you know, did a good job keeping their budget as trim as possible. But like Counselor Norris said as well, I think there are some creative ways, you know, maybe we do it at the beginning of the next fiscal year, or something like that. Those are my thoughts. I think that I would prefer to cut maybe 30% of the increase if we could, and I think it'd be, capital improvements is the easiest way to do that. I'd be curious to see what the rest of the council thinks.
well, you're just gonna be kicking the can down the road, and these repairs need to be done. We actually tried to get the restrooms done this year, and we didn't get bids. And so we put it all together for the restrooms and the roofs, and we included the pavilions. because we do have pavilions that need to have the roofs replaced. You know, there were other projects that were in all these, and we did cut these, we cut these budgets. And this is what we need to operate for this year. I understand it's an increase. But if you don't, if this is council's budget now, council wants to cut, that's on you. And it is moving forward, and then we'll have to operate for next year. And some of you will be on this council and will deal with the feedback and everything else. This is not an inflated budget. So this is council's opportunity to make their changes to it. So if the council wants to make changes, make changes. But if you have questions or comments on Deputy Mayor Depot's comments, you should do that now and not just quietly go and let Deputy Mayor Depot speak for everybody. So if you have comments, go ahead.
What page is the Park and Rec on that, what's that line item? What page is that?
Well, it starts on 85, but if you go to 89, these are where the capital improvements are.
If I may speak out of turn, how much
Do you-
is,
do you-
I'll yield.
Are you done?
I'm sorry.
Councilor Norris, you have the floor.
how much is the project to add? What are we looking at adding to the park in terms of electricity? Was it for lights or something?
It's not on here.
It is not on here.
No, sir.
Okay. And then, so the part-time HR person is not working in HR all the time?
So we have a part-time person that started doing records filing and some other things, and has moved from planning and zoning to HR, and is now helping with beach passes in Parks and Rec. So that person, go ahead.
Just for clarification, the person started out as seasonal park and rec.
That's true. So they started out as seasonal park and rec, and then, because they were a known entity, we used them, and, but they've been used in different positions, effectively doing clerical work, filing. I don't know if they've done any clerk typist kind of things or not. I'm not sure. Data entry, some data entry, but they have worked in 2 or 3 different departments. And it's not a full-time, and it's not full-time, I mean, it's still part-time, several hours during the week, but it's not every week.
Right. But that position has or has not worked in HR before?
No, they're working in HR now.
They work in HR. Oh, okay.
They worked HR last year, and they're working HR right now, and they're also helping with the beach passes.
So, in the budget, do we highlight temporary part-time versus regular part-time?
No. I mean, all part-time is technically temporary. If that makes sense. I mean, there is I mean, if you take
Well,
the
it's labor
lifeguard,
law about temporary people, I mean.
it's more, right, but it's more seasonal type. Is
Right.
the biggest of our part-time would be the seasonal for, obviously the biggest one, park and rec, the beach staff, the recreation staff, those types of things.
Okay.
However, but yeah, there are minimum hours, or there's a maximum amount of hours that they're working during the week.
Got it. So we just had so please help me understand. We just had a resident talking about expansion of Groton City Day. What exactly is the expansion and what is the dollars associated to that?
This is our 40th anniversary, is that what this is?
I'm not sure.
I think this is our 40th anniversary. So we were looking to add some attractions and things to it. Like, for example, we're gonna add a dunk booth, and anybody in this room that wants to be in the dunk booth, you're cordially invited. And, but we're gonna have the typical City Day things, but then there's additional City Day things that we are looking to do, and that's the expansion. We're moving it on this end of the park this year so that we can expand. Some of the departments are, we've asked all the departments to participate either through additional personnel or through, so there'll be touch-it trucks and those kind of things that we always do, but then there may be additional venue, for example, face paintings, petting zoos, those kind of things that we're doing because it's our 40th anniversary, and that's what we're doing. And I recognize Ms. Patrick's concerns, because if you go back to City Day, years ago, it was 100% on the clerk. And then it went away from that, we got Parks and Rec involved, less from the clerk and more involved with Parks and Rec, but you still had funding coming for city clerk for buying food and stuff like that. So this is just a continuation. Councilor Sheffield.
Getting back to following up on Deputy Mayor Depot regarding the maintenance of the parks at a Park and Rec. We're doing a lot of improvements in the park, and I think having these maintenance projects going on to supplement the new the basketball court, the tennis courts, I think a revitalization of the park, this capital would be part of that, I think. And I think waiting off till possibly next year, it may be more expensive. You never know what the economy is going to be like. So I think while we have it in place and we don't have a significant increase in the budget, I think we should keep it as is and keep things going forward with the restroom and pavilion and the security cameras and the like. And I think that would be great for this year for the park to, again, supplement with the basketball courts, the softball ball fields, and the tennis courts. So, yeah, I think we should keep it in place. So I'm for that.
Councilor Norris?
But at the same time, I also feel if something is not an emergency and something can be delayed to future years, we should consider that. For example, the security cameras at Washington Park. Is that a dying need that it needs to be done in fiscal year 26 versus fiscal year 28? And I understand, do we keep pushing it down? But I don't remember ever hearing in the past 4 years security cameras at Washington Park. So my ears tell me it's a new thing. So can it? But it also could have been, we don't hear the whole plan of what we're doing, so sometimes it's very difficult to do that. I don't want to spend the rest of the night going around in circles. I gotta tell you, I would like to see some cuts. I did send an email to the mayor, and he responded very eloquently, so I thank you for that. But I am gonna propose some cuts, and it's just like, when do we get to that? Because we could be spinning here all night.
Did you have anything you want to say? Deputy Mayor Depot?
So to that point, I I have a list of cuts that I think that we could make. And I just wanted to elaborate on the point of the budget. I know that we've discussed, obviously, it's a continuation budget. We want to be able to provide the services that we already provide and that the residents expect. And I guess, just to elaborate on my issue and where most of the things that I think could be cut are in these areas where the department head came and when asked why the budget is increasing or why the budget is staying the same even though we didn't spend the money, the answer was, we're not sure what it's going to be next year, or it might be an increase or something like that. And I know there was, in one department, in the building department, the building maintenance department, under materials and supplies, I took the number we spent last year, doubled it, added 5%, and the amount we're requesting for this coming year is still more than that number, which to me doesn't make any sense. If we spent, $15,000 last year, the reason that we're budgeting for 45,000 or whatever the number is can't be just in case. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me to rationalize increasing the budget that much for that reason. And similarly,
Which account is that?
building maintenance under general, material and supply.
Hold on.
It's on page 81.
I will tell you that we just recently identified a crack in the building that's going to require repair. We just identified a broken sewer pipe that is going to need to be replaced. We have some mold that we identified that's going to have sheetrock ripped out and replaced that we weren't expecting. And these are the kinds of things that happen when you're talking about building maintenance. We're also looking at other things. Now, Director Settlemeyer has only been here a year, and so he's getting his feet wet. Now he's looking deeper at things, and we're identifying issues that are coming up that need to be replaced. And he will continue to identify them, and if we need to, we'll say, okay, we don't have any money. If we don't have money, you can't get them done. We recognize that. But those are the types of things that come up that you can't always plan for.
Right, and I understand that. And that's the case every year, which is why I would look back at the last several years at what we've spent. So for example, those types of things, usually we would hire a contractor, right, for mold remediation. We don't do that in-house.
That is correct.
So that would be under contractual services. Even, this current fiscal year, we're estimated to spend $46,520. The prior fiscal year was $58,844 was our actual year ended, but we're still requesting 65. And I know that this past year we did the carpeting, we did this room falls, there was a lot of work done. So just to me, it doesn't make sense to continue budgeting 65. We haven't even spent that, and for something unexpected, like a crack in the building, that sounds like something that maybe would be more than a couple of dollars and would come out of a capital budget possibly, or, this is part of the reason I think that maybe to me, the budget should be more realistic for what we know is gonna happen, and then the money should be in the contingency fund for things that are unexpected, rather than in each department budget, because then we've got 10,000 here, 20,000 here, 15,000 here in department budgets for unexpected events, rather than, to me, contingency is where the unexpected events should be. And for example, this year, we're under budget right now for this year, but it's in each individual budget, whereas I feel like as a taxpayer, as a resident, it would make more sense to say, okay, we're gonna stock, instead of 115,000, which has been the contingency forever, 400,000 in the contingency, and that's for every department across, all of those. And then when those things arise that are, oh no, we didn't plan for this, that it comes to the council and the council's made aware, hey, something unexpected came up, instead of at the end of the year, it's like, oh, something unexpected came up. So we need to have a just-in-case budget because something might come up. Even, under general material and supply, and on that page 81, we spent $15,190 last year of our $40,000 budget, but we're asking $40,000 again. And even when you go back and look at the prior years, we don't spend $40,000. That's not a typical amount. And yes, something arises, but general material and supply, even, like I said, that's the number. If you double that number and add 5%, it still doesn't come to 40,000. So I'm not sure where we're getting that number, other than we're picking a number and then going, okay, let's go like 10 grand more to make sure we've got wiggle room. But that to me is contingency, not budget.
If
Is
you
it-
want us to change our philosophy next year, I have no problem doing that, but all you're just doing is just moving it from one and just put it into the contingency. And again, I have no problem with doing that, and then if, it's just gonna drive the contingency, because 115 will not be enough if we're gonna go with that approach as far as everything that's gonna potentially go over. But I understand what you're saying completely, but also we'll just, and then you'll have a bigger pool for everybody if you go that route.
But,
Okay,
okay,
all right, I think, unless we have more discussion, let's just get to the cuts. So
If I
do
may.
you have specific cuts in mind? Do you have more comments, or do you want to?
No, I'm sorry.
I'm going to yield to Counselor Norris.
So, my cuts, and I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, because we have not discussed this in any way, but I don't know if it's best if we list out the cuts, the dollar figures, and then go from there. So my first one would be to eliminate Washington Park security cameras,
All right, hold on. I need you to get us to a page so we're all on the same page.
Page 89. Parks and Recreation Maintenance Capital,
Okay,
Washington Park security cameras, second from the bottom.
okay,
I believe that's 63,108.
you want to cut the entire amount?
Yes.
So let me tell you why we had that in there. Because of all the improvements we're doing to the parks with the new basketball courts, the new tennis courts, and with all the new equipment that we put in. We have had graffiti and other things that have occurred in the park. And the recommendation came from the police chief to get security cameras that would be tied in here. That is what that was for.
Yes.
So you're okay with cutting it?
Yes, I am.
Then you'll cut it. So
Well,
108.
It's a discussion for council to have. I'm just throwing these out there.
Okay, so let's open the floor for council to discuss this line item.
So one of the things that I do know about security cameras, they don't prevent, they're reactionary. So while I do see the value of security cameras in the proximity of where we are with our police department, the square mileage of the city, I don't know if $63,000 is worth it for one park. I would dare say most communities for park size of Washington Park don't spend $63,000 on security cameras.
Okay, any other discussion on this? Okay, then we'll leave it on the board.
The next one, $15,000 part-time staff HR. In my opinion,
Page?
I'm sorry. Ooh, page. I'm sorry,
27.
27. Yes. My rationale behind that is I can appreciate that HR was short-staffed. Very shortly, we will be back to where we ought to be. And it sounded like the city already has a floater around somewhere.
Well, that person that does float will be charged to that department when they're working in that department.
So where are they getting charged now when they don't work for that department?
So when they are selling beach passes or doing park and rec stuff, they'd be charged to the park and rec account. When they are doing part-time work for the planning department, they charge to the planning department.
Okay,
So if there's no work, they're not working. And that means we're not spending money for somebody just hang around. We have them for projects, and they go from project to project, from department to department, in order to support that.
and approximately out, so this $15,000 is based on X number of hours of them working in HR?
Yes. I'll get to you in a second.
I'm still
Deputy
comfortable
Mayor
with cutting
Depot.
it.
I agree with Counselor Norris. I think last year, to me, if we were completely fully staffed with all our full-time employees, we probably wouldn't need an extra part-time employee, which is how we paid for it last year, was within the budget already of that department. So if we did that last year, in my mind, you know, if we wanted to use the money that is there for full-time employees that were under budget because we haven't filled positions, that makes sense. But I don't think it makes sense to essentially add a part-time position to the next year's budget, on top of budgeting for all the full-time employees. And obviously, like I said, I agree with Counselor Norris, and we fit it in the budget last year where we were under budget because we weren't fully staffed, and to me, that makes sense to continue to do.
So we sent you this, I don't know if you read it, I don't know if you got it, but I'm gonna read it again. So under Human Resources, part-time, the proposed $15,000 cut would result in the HR department losing a part-time assistant, a position department needs in the interim until a new HR director and generalists are brought on board and fully trained. Tasks the assistant will be responsible for include scan, file, and record the performance reviews given to the seasonal staff by their supervisors. Support the hiring of 2026 seasonal staff, approximately 50 to 60 employees, by sending and tracking the required paperwork for these new hires, returning staff, scan and save to the employee personnel files, as well as filing all paperwork into the hard file folders, scan and file rejection letters for candidates who were not selected, add the new hires to the master spreadsheet, send the offer letters to new staff with attachments as necessary, and track their return, make the appointments for the pre-employment and drug screenings, and have access to hire image so that she could track the background checks as well as the testing results from Pequot. So that was the HR director's justification for the part-time person for $15,000. Deputy Mayor Depot.
So, and which position was doing that work prior to having this part-time person do the work? Because someone was doing it.
Someone was, but I think some of it was being done by Parks and Rec as well.
So what is the reason why it wouldn't continue to be done by, say, because I know, you know, they've got supervisors in Parks and Rec for the summer, and we've got recurring Parks and Rec employees that come back every year that are experienced. They're not all brandy new, need to be onboarded. So what's the reason we wouldn't have the same staff that has been doing it in prior years do it?
Well, the new staff's not fully trained yet. So some of this was being done in HR.
Are the positions that we're hiring in HR, none of them are entry level, correct? They're not 0 years of experience?
Not the director, certainly generalist. I'm not sure where she's coming in. I don't know the answer.
I understand there will be an onboarding process, but we do have an employee who has been here several years, as well as Parks and Rec staff who, to your point, have filled in to fill the gaps in this role. If we are under budget in salaries, I would again encourage, yes, have someone step up and work, this part-time person to work, but I think that it should be able to fit in the budget that we already had without adding a job for the next year. So I'm not trying to,
Okay,
I'm not saying that we need to cut that department, but I think we can get the work done with the same man-hours with the staff that we have, considering that the positions that we're filling in HR are not 0 years of experience, entry-level positions. Those people aren't gonna come in fresh with no knowledge of how to schedule an appointment for a physical or drug test. They'll know how to do that.
Any other comments on this line item? Okay,
If I may,
Counselor Norris,
planning and zoning, oh, sorry, let me find a page.
Page,
Yes, the one with all the red, yes. Page 46. Office operating expenses, office supplies and advertising, eliminate $3,000. So that would be reducing fiscal year '26 from 15 down to 12, which is still a sizable increase.
okay, questions or comments on that? Okay,
Now, the last two, let's discuss this one. So we talked about Groton City Day, 40th. I believe that's citizen participation. So I would love to know what $2,200 can really get us. Because I would assume renting a dunk tank is about $1,500.
where?
I'm sorry, page 18.
Okay,
So, my whole thing, I understand it's the 40th, and I think it's a great thing, and we should celebrate that. I know $2,200 doesn't even move the needle in any direction, but it's also, okay, where did that dollar figure come from? Because some of us here know how much it costs to run special events, so it's like, what are we getting for $2,200? Because if we're not, the answer could be, hey, well, wait a minute, Paul, and I get it. Things just cost more than we did last year. But then let's not lay the expectation that the event is going to be posher, larger, more exuberant, more welcoming, whatever it is, for $2,000. So if the answer is, well, no, we're getting the exact same stuff, but it costs more, in 2023, an inflatable obstacle course was $2,700. Now it's $29,000.
when I talked to Jackie, there are increases in food products where a lot of this comes from. And, so we're doing part, Parks and Rec is doing some, the different departments are doing some, so when you add it all, that's where the big expansion is going to happen. So you got a little bit over here and a little bit there. That way, one department doesn't bear the brunt of this event.
Thank you. Is it possible to tell me, therefore, how much the event is increasing, knowing all these little pieces in the
I
departments?
don't remember what the, our budget is for this year. We do have an internal committee, this meeting.
All right, therefore, I move that, well, I don't move anything, but I'm gonna throw out there that we reduce, and I know some of it is candy for council to be in July 4th, that we reduce 2250.
From Groton Day?
Well, it's under, well,
It's on
Up.
page 18, the cost centers, you have two cost centers.
I believe it appears. Okay, help me understand this. So in operating expenses, we have 12,250, and in, oh, I see what you got. Yeah, so we'd eliminate the entire $2,250 from Groton Day.
So from Groton Day, you're taking 2,500,
Correct.
okay?
Well, no, it's 2,250.
2,250. Okay,
And then,
still have the floor.
so this one I need help with. Because I'm, when it comes to planning and zoning, which takes me back to page 46. I know planning and zoning director sent me a very good explanation on what we're doing with contract services. I still cannot wrap my head around it on what we budget versus we actually expend. And I'm wondering, even in that $219,000, is there anything in there that is not? Is there anything there that is not critical to be done in fiscal year '26? And the reason why I ask that is in fiscal year '23, fiscal year '24, fiscal year '25, we put money in there for activities of some sort that we could be doing with planning and zoning, and they just don't seem to take place. So I'm looking to, can we reduce that line $20,000? And that would be contract services.
Now, I have my spreadsheet in front of me. Okay, so we said something to you about the projects, because there was a request about what are we doing and moving things. So, Birch Plain Creek, $3,000 to complete the paperwork does need to be continued on, delay not recommended. Phase 2, the legal, $4,000 in legal fees, delay is not recommended. $20,000 for the upper that is going to be used if the ADA accessibility for the lower themes is, comes over. And that's not recommended to, it says the funds dedicated to this project may be encumbered to complete the design and implementation work for Lower Thamesview Park. $130,000 match, plus a $75,000 design grant for Small Harbor Improvement Program. This is for the development of the lower Thames View. It is not recommended complications be added to this project by delaying its implementation. The docks are on hold. Renderings is where? Okay, retyping and formatting are crucial to getting the work done for the part-time. Contractual services, legal fees, 12,600, 18,000. That's for the regulations and for so where are we here? And then that's it.
So if I may,
So that's where the 219,500
Yep.
come in. And that was sent to council, so council has that.
but is there anything in fiscal year '24 and '23 that has not been done? Because again, if we're budgeting,
24 and 23, I don't think so. I think these are, well, the Birch Plain Creek is continuation. That's 3,000, Groton Estates, that's part of the Birch Plain Creek Phase 2. That's 4,000. But the other things are not past projects. These are new projects that were part of the $218,500.
so my last question then, and I probably belittling this to death, so I apologize. So we didn't spend this year in contract services call it $60,000, $70,000. It's like, what didn't get done with that $70,000? We were budgeted 134, and we were only spending 68.
Do you have anything in your files?
What I recall on that was I believe there was a piece for the upper cost of property, which we were potentially going to encumber. That RFP is currently out for the lower cost of ADA, set to close, I believe it's this week.
Right.
And then the other thing, and you can correct me on the pronunciation, the charade,
The charrettes?
or charrettes, yeah, what, I believe
Yeah,
there
we
was.
didn't have enough money to do them
something
all,
for that.
so she didn't do them.
I do not recall if there was other things, but those are the two things that stick out.
So, out of $70,000, I'm gonna take
But that
the,
was last year, or this year.
right,
These are,
Yeah, yeah.
these are new projects, these are not continuation to push on projects that we didn't get done.
okay. So it is, and I hear what you said and I read it also, I just wanna make clear, so that in that 219, we have no, what did you call them? Vignettes? Charrettes, we have no charrettes.
I don't think there's charrettes in there, hold up.
Okay. Because I guess, and I know I'm to some making no sense here. I'm just like, if we put money in the budget and it's there for 1 or 2 years, and then we just don't do it, it just makes me feel that what we do, we should come to work every day with a matter of urgency. And if we have things budgeted and we're not spending it because, we don't have time, then we're not putting our level of urgency in it, and maybe it's not that important. And I think where we're heading, and particularly in fiscal year '26, based on taxes unfairly placed upon us in part because of the town, now's the time to say, the wish list is closed. You know, it's like running your own budget. I want to redo my kitchen, but it ain't happening. You know, so That's why I'm looking at, and you may think, and you're probably right, nickel and dime in the budget. Because we all know it's gonna take a lot more than $60,000 to move the needle. But every penny counts. So, I throw out there, okay, $20,000 out of contractual services. So we're going from 119 to 199. Realistically, taking that $20,000 out, what can be delayed, deferred, that is not gonna put us in a situation where we go, I understand planning, I understand, I love 5 years, I plan 5 years for everything. But if we don't do one particular thing for $20,000 and it gets pushed out to 27 or 28, what is that?
I don't know, she'll have to decide based on what you got.
Okay.
So we'll put the 20,000 in there. Deputy Mayor Depot.
So I just, going back through my emails, on April 24th, we were sent a spreadsheet from the planning department with their contractual services budget from last year, what was spent, what wasn't spent, and then what is on her list for this year. And the Upper Thames View Park Engineering and Design, which we may be able to encumber this fiscal year, is included in her budget for next fiscal year. So that is a project that got moved from last year to
Okay.
next fiscal year.
But that money may be encumbered this year. Because that $20,000 is there. Ron, go ahead.
There is no plan for the upper at this point in time. This is just the lower that we're doing it, and I
Right.
believe the intent was if that went, because that is gonna be paid, there's a grant that we have received for that funding, but if the bids come in higher than the grant award, we would encumber the money that was originally budgeted for the upper.
Right. So,
Okay, so, but in next fiscal year's budget, she's got $20,000 for the Upper Thames View Park Engineering and Design. Which, just because someone, I forgot who said it, but someone said we didn't carry any projects over from last year to this coming year's fiscal budget, but in her breakdown, that is carried over. That it wasn't completed last year
okay, well, it's being
and it's going
cut,
to the
so
next
doesn't matter.
year.
Okay, any other comments? All right. Deputy Mayor Depot, did you have additional cuts?
Yes. Let's see. Let me just write this down.
Or have your cuts already been encumbered,
Uh,
incorporated?
I did have similar ones to some of Counselor Norris's questions or cuts. Now I'm gonna forget the page numbers. Under building materials and supplies.
Page?
Hold on. Where did I put it? Page 81. I think. Yep, page 81. Under general material and supply, I can't imagine that budget needs to be more than double plus 5%. So I'd like to cut that $8,000 from the budget.
Okay,
And then under that same page, under contractual services, I'd like to see that go down 5,000. Based on the year prior, we did spend a higher amount, but we still didn't even hit 60,000. So I think that 60,000 is a reasonable number for that line item. Does anyone else want to comment? And then the other line item, on page 75, under sanitation, we spent about the same amount in municipal solid waste as we did the year prior, but we're still requesting a more than 15% increase. And again, this was one of those lines where, you know, we are expecting maybe the tipping fees to go up, but if we're doing it based on prior year's expense, it doesn't make sense to me to increase that 15%. I do think, you know, we need to build in leeway for if the tipping fee increases. Let's see. Hold on one second, I just want to calculate this. So I think, you know, maybe a 5 or 10% increase in that line item. Obviously, that is not something that we want to reduce too low, but I can't imagine that the tipping fees are going to increase 10%.
Or which page are you on? Just for
75?
So just so you're aware, that's the cost center. So if we go to the next page, that's gonna have your breakdown, because in that cost center is gonna be contractual
Oh.
wages and other things.
I was
just
looking at
for
the wrong
clar-
numbers.
Okay.
Thank you. This was the number I wanted to look at. Yes, so, but what I said still stands. So we haven't spent the budgeted amount in the prior years. So this year, we're planning to spend 217. Last year, we spent 219. The year prior, we spent 220, but we're still budgeting 263. So even if we did do a 10% increase over what we spent last year, which I think would be reasonable, that still only comes to 238 and change. So I'd like to cut 13,000 from that line item, which is, you know, still higher than even that number. And I know, you know, as the mayor said, this is the department head's first year with the budget. But just looking at historically the budget, we've always budgeted so much more in that line and not used it. And I think I would rather cut the taxes a little bit and not have to keep putting the money back in the general fund because we're under budget.
The only comment I'm gonna have to that is there is an unknown with recycling. And that's kind of why, just with the tipping fees with recycling, and that's the only reason. There's just an unknown that something could change that we're not sure of. That's the only reason why, just for
In terms
for
of the
record.
fee
The
increasing?
tipping fees, correct.
But even that increase, what would we predict an increase would be? It's not gonna be 25%.
I could not tell you, to be honest.
Well, which is why, you know, I think a 10% plus, that's more than 10%. I think that makes sense to budget for a 10% potential increase, but I can't imagine, again, looking at the historic amount. And I know that the fees have gone up in the last 5 years, yet we're still way under budget every year. So I feel like that's a reasonable place to cut the budget a little bit. And then, a question on the pavilions. Are all of the pavilions of the same condition in the park?
I would answer that with no. As far as the roofs themselves, yes, some do have will need additional repairs based on the wood underneath the shingles.
Okay.
But I would say, based on the conversation, I'm not a roofer, but based on the conversation, all the roofs do need to replace, but there are definitely some of those pavilions that do have rotted wood underneath.
So have we gotten a life expectancy number from, like, if it's been inspected? Like, are we thinking they're gonna fall down in 2 months, or they have 5 more years, or did we get that?
We have not done anything that I'm aware of. I'm not sure if Mary has.
We-
I mean, there are
to my
holes
knowledge, we haven't done an engineering
in some
study
of
yet.
them, but yeah.
Okay, so the 250,000 that's set aside for that, that's the complete expected cost of redoing the bathroom and all the pavilions.
That cost was to do roofs on all of the buildings with the exception of the building behind the Little League field, because that roof is newer. It was just done in the past, I'm gonna say 10 years, 'cause it was since I've been here. I don't recall actually when it was done. So it'd be roofs for all the other buildings there, meaning the concession stand, and not the dugouts, just the buildings. So the, building, the concession stand, building in between all the fields there, the electrical supply, which is by the basketball courts, and then the other restroom, which is over here in the parking lot. It also includes the renovations of both bathrooms, meaning the one over here in the parking lot and the one in the middle of the three fields. And then the final thing that it does is put vinyl siding on all of the buildings that would match the press boxes. And that includes the building behind the dugout, or behind the Little League field, the building in doesn't include the building in the middle for the siding, because that actually has the fancier brick on the side of it, but it would do the vinyl up, on the apex there. I forgot what it's actually, the true calling of it, and then the electrical building and the restroom over here. That is what that has come up with, and that was based on some of the prices that we did receive when we did put it out. However, it didn't make sense to do it at that point in time, just with funding purposes. So that is where Mary came up with her budget, and that's what that project's all inclusive of.
Okay, and what is the life expectancy once if we were to complete all of those repairs? What is the life expectancy of all of those buildings?
I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. Again, I'm not a builder. I mean, we could ask on that. The biggest thing is there is, again, some rot on some of those buildings. The electrical building has some where underneath that roof in the corner, I believe, is facing the basketball courts. So the whole intent, kind of like what we're trying to do with the Zaberski house, is to remove a lot of that wood and put the vinyl and aluminum. So there, and to vinyl side it, so there isn't that constant maintenance cost of painting and updating. But it's not gonna help you
Well-
tonight, but I don't honestly know what that life expectancy would be.
So the reason I'm asking is generally when we're doing, like, we're setting aside money for tractor replacement or for, replacing the guardrails at the subvets, but something this large, $250,000 improvement of the park, I know that we've been working on putting a bonding package together. To me, that is also something that residents would be willing to bond for, as opposed to another project. To Counselor Sheffield's point, our Parks Department is very important to the residents. So I do think that it's important to get these kinds of things done. Even just, I posted one post about the tennis courts, and tons of people have been talking to me about the tennis courts because they're very excited about the tennis courts and the pickleball courts. So I agree that that's very important, but I think rather than take this huge lump sum out of this year's budget, I would be in favor of putting that into a bonding package, unless there was some kind of extenuating circumstances where a builder says, this is gonna fall apart in a week. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. So I guess I'm in favor of setting aside, maybe setting aside some money for it, but I think doing a whole $250,000 in this 1 year's budget for that project, when it's something that's going to probably last 20 years once we repair the roofs and the buildings, to me, that makes more sense to bond that and not put it on such a heavy burden right this year on the taxpayers.
So I think to answer your question in a different way as a non-builder, from a bonding question, it would meet the requirements of bonding. As far as the life expectancy, it would be over the 20 years. So I'll answer it from a finance side, but I don't know if that's gonna be a 30,
Right.
25-year life expectancy, or if it would go to a 50. I honestly don't know what the life expectancy of all that is.
Okay, and if we were, I know it's come up a few times that we're thinking about putting a bonding package together. Did we have a timeline on that of when we wanted to do that at all, or?
There isn't a timeline at this point for that. It's in the initial phases of being talked about, but there hasn't been anything like a timeline drafted or anything permanently.
I mean, in my mind, I mean, I'd be interested to see what the other counselors think about that, but that is a long-term project. To me, that qualifies for bonding, and maybe rather than, you know, in a year of economic turmoil for everybody, instead of putting that all on this year, I think maybe we push that to go into a bonding package. I'd like to know what the other counselors think, because my inclination is just to cut that 250 and put it to a future bonding package or other funding source.
Councilor Sheffield?
You know, a bond package would be great. It depends on, I guess, how expeditiously we want to put that together with other things, and how long it'll take to get it approved, and again, through the Freeman, and no guarantee the public jumps on board. That's probably the only issue there, depending on what other things we want to put together with that bond. So that's something that hasn't been discussed at the present time, as far as what else besides the park that we want to include. And that's where I think I sort of lean towards doing it now while we're getting the ball field, you know, the tennis court done, the basketball court, and have everything nice and revitalized early as possible, and not wait till the bond package is done, which could be maybe the middle of next year possibly. So, and that's if we can put it together the right way. So I kind of err on, if the availability of it now to get it done while we're doing all this other new stuff, that's where I would lean towards. But if, like I said, if there's a bond that's out that we can do that is more feasible, that would be less on the, you know, as far as budgetary concerns, but it still has to be paid for by the taxpayers at the end of the day. So that's, you know, that's my thoughts on that. But I would rather do it, get it done now with this budget, and not wait till next year until we put a package together. So, and again, we don't know what next year is going to be like. I mean, it may be worse off than now. So, sure, we hope things will get better, but we're really not that sure. So,
Councilor Norris?
I don't know what the policy, do we currently have any bonds out there? Do we have a large debt service?
No, from the city side, our debt service is pretty low.
Okay.
As far as, I mean, I don't have, hold on one sec.
So while you do that, is it possible, and I don't know if this is the year to do it, whatever, I will admit, some of those picnic pavilions are pretty shot. But I wonder, is this the opportunity, and this is a question, obviously, for the two gentlemen around the table. So, like we have a CIP for vehicles, do we dare have some type of CIP for park improvements? So if we're looking at this year, I don't remember what it was, 230, 250, do we have each year, like we do with vehicles, $100,000? And that just roll, I know like the town does that, I do that, you know, is that a way that we could shrink that nut by 2/3, but we know if we have 5 pavilions, 2 are gonna get done this year, 2 next year, and 2 the year after. Well, that would make 6, but, you know.
So from a traditional budgeting here, the budgets have been set up where it's project-based and then that way it's kind of getting approved. The project itself is getting approved as part of the budget. There are certain ones, like you said, that when we do that, put it aside. The fire, for an example, the vehicles that we try to put that money aside, knowing that we're not going to be able to budget a ladder truck for 1.5 million in 1 year and be able to pay for it. Right. The other ones, so most of the time it's 100% project specific. Even in Park and Rec, if you recall, in this budget is the year 2 of a tractor. piece. So we kind of have done it a little bit with that, but mainly it's usually the entire project gets put in the capital, and then it moves, then that piece gets moved over into this the capital fund, and then as the project gets done, it gets paid for out of that. But that, I mean, that is another way to do some of these projects, is to put a earmark that it's gonna be X amount of year for park improvements, and then a decision we made as to what those are. And then to answer the previous question.
Yeah, sorry.
There, as of June 30th, 2025, there is just under 1.5 million of debt on the city. So the city has worked down most of its debt.
Which is a good thing.
So where are we on the 250? Deputy Mayor Depot.
So, right now, with all of the numbers that we've listed between Counselor Norris and myself, so far, that'd be $129,358, which is about 15% less of an increase than the mayor's proposed budget. If we were to add those park upgrades of 250, that's lowering the increase by 44%. I think, to me, bonding makes sense. I understand wanting to get it done quickly. I think maybe if that's the case, I don't think we should let time put us in a worse financial, I understand that we want to get it done quickly, but what that means is instead of spreading that cost over time for the residents, we're going to make them pay for it all this fiscal year. And I think that we can do it in a reasonable amount of time. Like we said, even if it is mid next year that we put a bonding package together, that's within 2 years we get the pavilions done. We just did all these other improvements. I think that at least the residents I've spoken to would like their taxes to go up as little as possible. And I think, given the prospect of bonding and taking an extra year and a half to maybe get that project done, I think residents would prefer that. I think a year and a half wait for something that's, in that condition, I don't think that's unreasonable. But obviously, there's only 4 counselors, so we would need everyone to vote yes on that if it were to go through. And yes.
Just
Finance.
for what was the number that you'd come up with?
129,358. Is that
So,
not correct?
yep. No, that is 100% correct from a cut on the expenditure side. I just want to be 100% disclosure-wise, that one of those cuts, that 15,000 from the HR budget, is only going to be a $2,700 cut, because 82% of that is funded from the utilities. So that will not, that 15,000 will not directly reduce taxes. Only 2,700 will reduce taxes, because the other reduction will be coming from the funding from Groton Utilities for their portion of the HR. I just didn't want you to think when the revised budget came that it didn't match, so I just wanted to put that out there.
So again, $250,000, deputy's hard over on it, wants it, so that lower the increase. So where are we?
I guess the question is, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, you have the floor.
I guess the question is it reasonable to expect a bonding package to be put together in the next year or year and a half?
I would say potentially a year and a half, the next one. It all depends on just the approval process in itself it takes time, so, but I would say a year and a half would be a realistic time frame if there was one put together. And I mean, there will be something there has been some potential in the utilities for bonding. They're coming up on their 5-year plan. There is a potential here for the roof of this building. So there has been talks of some, it's just a matter of when that would occur. I don't have a time for you on that. But I said realistically, 1.5 years would be a realistic.
And can you give like a really high-level overview of like the steps of that make that time frame, that make it take so long?
So first, one, just putting the package together of getting everything as far as what the departments are looking to bond. So just getting everybody's information together, to put that together. You need to go through, working with the bond council to put resolutions together. From the utility side, it will need to go through utility approval. From the city side, it needs to go through both of those, the utility and the city would need to go through city council approval. Then there would need to be a Freeman meeting for the approval of the Freeman for those bondings. Then once you've met all the approval, now you have authorized but unissued debt. So you've basically have that you've been authorized to issue it, but you haven't done that issuance. Right. So now you have to go through the issuance process of working with rating agencies to come out, go through the financials of the city, and then eventually, after that point, then you would actually go out to bond, put a bond package out where it would be bid by our financial advisor, and then be reviewed and gone through. So each of those steps just takes a month to 2 months. So as you're going through, it just takes quite a while. It's not one of those overnights. If there were to be something that was emergent per se, depending on the size of it, you would still need all of those approvals, but instead of going for a bond, you could go for a band, which is a bond anticipation note, which is a short-term borrowing. As long as the dollar amount is low enough, you don't have to go through the rating agencies. The problem with that is you still have, minus the rating agency costs, you still have all the other issuance costs just for a 1-year bond. You still have this, the legal cost is still the same, the financial advisor cost is still the same, and it's only for a 1 year. You've just eventually saved the rating agency cost. So we'd rather just go out and do a bond as long as we know our dollar amounts are good. What you don't want to do is go out for a bond of 10 million to have the project come in at 5 million, and now you just have $5 million of debt. That all you can do is use it to pay the debt off. So you just want, and that's again why it takes time, because you want to make sure you have accurate numbers, that everything is in line. So that's just why the process is longer, and it's not just like going to the bank and getting a home equity loan or a mortgage and just.
Okay. I think, can I ask a clarification question on the HR thing? So if we
Go
cut,
ahead, you have the floor.
if we cut that HR part-time staffer, does that impact the budget that we just voted to approve for the utility?
It wouldn't affect their budget, and the fact that they've already budgeted for a higher return to the city, they just wouldn't pay the full amount back to the city for that HR. It would be reduced. So in the utility budgets, all 3 of them, the piece that we have set aside for HR due from the utilities, that is what is budgeted in theirs. If it gets reduced by the 15, you've essentially, that other 12,300 will not be paid out of the electric, sewer, and water back to the city. So that, so on their side, that line items will be under budget for the HR services. So it affects it, but it really doesn't, because they've budgeted for that whole amount as far as their percentage.
Okay. I think I'd be interested in, rather than eliminating the whole 250 for Washington Park, in maybe setting aside a portion of it this year. And then if we start the process of putting a bond package together, then we use that maybe to do these. But if not, by next budget year, we revisit this to potentially be done next year, in next year's budget with, I was thinking maybe 75,000 set aside instead of the 250. I don't know what the other counselors think.
Counselor Sheffield?
No, I think if we're gonna do this pavilion, we don't want to pick certain pavilions here and there. If they need to get done, just get it all done in one swoop. I don't want to split the money to work on one pavilion, wait till the next year, and maybe do another one with additional money. Hopefully, that's not the thinking, but I wouldn't have done it that way, to set it aside. But I would like to do it all in one swoop. I wouldn't split it up.
Deputy Mayor Depot?
So it's under capital improvements, so it would be that amount set aside until we get to the amount to do the project. Has there been any indication that those repairs to the pavilions are an urgent safety hazard?
Not a safety hazard, but if you go look at Pavilion 5, there's a board that's missing. And if you go look at the roofs, they definitely need to be repaired. So if you're saying, is it gonna come crashing down next week? I don't know. Like I said, we don't go out and get an engineering study for everything that we're going to do.
Right.
And so,
Well, I thought we had a quote for the, did that 250 number not come from a quote?
So those did come from quotes. One of the things that we did do, we looked at the bathrooms. We looked at the bathrooms, and we did not receive it, but Mary did get some indication from some of the people that were at the walkthrough as far as the cost. There was reasons why they didn't bid it. And then we changed the scope for just the siding and the roofs, and we did get proposals on that. However, once we changed the direction with the ARPA funds for the Zaberski house, it eliminated the funding stream for that. So she did have the quote, or the bid results for that. So just based on the conversation and those quotes, that's where she came up with her figure for that project.
Okay. I understand what Counselor Sheffield's saying, but we're essentially for that project increasing every taxpayer's taxes $10.50 per $100,000 of property owned, I believe, from, if I calculated that right. Because right now, with the mayor's budget, the increase is $36 per $100,000 of property, right?
That sounds
Does that
right.
sound right? Right. In the responses we got to the questions, that was the number that came back, $36. So if we push this project and potentially bond it and/or just split it, I mean, that's a 9.45, is that what that says? 9.45%. I just don't think it's in the best interest of the taxpayers, unless it's a safety hazard that can't be patched. It seems like, yes, there's potentially some patching that could be done. To me, it's a big stretch to go, oh, there's a board missing, to let's spend $250,000 in this one fiscal year. I think it's reasonable to set aside money for the project, as we do with other projects. And maybe we should have set aside money for this project last year and the year before and the year before, but we didn't do that. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to the taxpayers to say, oh, well, we didn't realize it needed to be done, or we didn't set aside money last year, the year before, for whatever reason. So we're just gonna do 250 all in this year, when we could, like I said, if it's not a safety hazard, and we can delay it and potentially put it in a bonding package, because it is a project that the pavilions will last, 20 or 30 years after we rebuild them. That generally is not something we do in one fiscal year when it's this large of an amount of money. So, I mean, I'm happy to reduce it well, not quite 129, right? 117, it would be 117,058, right? Is that right?
Correct, with the reduction to the taxes based on the current proposed cuts that are been shown.
You know, I'm happy to have that reduction, and, but I think considering the increase, I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers because we didn't set aside capital improvement funds generically for Parks and Rec, that now we're gonna do 250 all in 1 year when we don't have a report that it's unsafe. They're still usable. Delaying it 1 year, in my mind, shouldn't change that.
Counselor Norris?
Couple of things. Direct to you, Haas. If you can please talk me through the bonding process again, because I'm stuck on why it would take 1.5 years.
It wouldn't potentially take a year. The question was for realistic, just to get everything together. I mean, it could be, if we know that right now these were the projects that we wanted to start going through.
Yeah.
I mean, it would probably be more of a 6 to 8 month.
Right.
But just for a realistic, with the timing of everything, getting all the information together, working with all the different organizations, that's why I say that. With bonds, and this is one of the reasons they do have an 18-month look-back period from
Yeah.
when you issue the debt to repay yourself, essentially, because they know the amount of time that it takes to issue debt, that you may be spending funds prior to that debt being issued.
Because the story I tell myself is, even if the 230 is put in the budget for fiscal year 26, that the work probably wouldn't get done until next spring anyway. So if we were to bond and get the bond in May, we can still do the work in May and June. Unless we
So-
wouldn't want to do it. It's something that has to be done in the fall. so-
Mary has said she wanted to get it done in the fall because we start renting right around now,
Yeah.
April, May. And so if you do that, then you're not able to rent the pavilions. That's one of the things that she did say in her presentation, that she would want to get it done in the fall of this year.
Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I think 75 would be kind of low to get.
But it gives you the most tax bang,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, what
Yeah.
people are looking for if that's the tack that you're taking. Councilor Sheffield.
Counselor Talley says she has to leave the meeting shortly, so we won't have a quorum in a couple of minutes here.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So I'm not sure.
Councilor Talley, do you have an opinion on this?
I am okay with the budget as is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so where are we?
I'm done.
Deputy Mayor Depot, this is your show.
I think I'm frustrated that we didn't look ahead to repair the pavilions in years prior. Since I got on this council, I've been asking for an asset management plan for Parks and Rec, and we haven't had one until this past year, and I think that's part of the reason that this has occurred. Unfortunately, and I understand Councilor Sheffield's point, that it would be great for them to get done, and it will be great when they're repaired. And I wish that,
Okay, so here's the deal. You need to vote. If you don't vote now, our Councilor Talley's going to leave,
Right.
and then this will fail, and it will automatically go to my budget.
I'm gonna move a number in 30 seconds.
Do we have 30 seconds?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
Make it 15.
that's very frustrating to me, but obviously without the other counselors that are here and we have to approve the budget tonight, I would like to propose that we move with the cuts that we already listed of 117,058. Right, that's that number?
Well, right, so the cuts are the full 129, it's just, I
Okay.
just wanted to let you know what the
Yes.
impact of the taxes are.
So that 129,358, which is the cuts that combined what Counselor Norris and I have listed, I think that's a reasonable amount to cut from the budget. It cuts just under 15% of the increase, and yeah, that's my proposal.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, with that, I will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you, council.
Recording stopped.